We only have 30 minutes, so we're going to jump right into it. Thank you so much to folks that are joining. Please write where you're from, include any contact information in the chats. This is the official launch of our Women's History Month panel titled The Power of Investing in You. We have Ekpoudom, who's a partner at Gingerbread Capital, Perry Yeatman, the head of corporate partnerships at Save the Children, and then myself, Leeatt Rothschild, the founder and CEO of Pact with Purpose. I'm going to serve as the moderator. So let me share a little bit about our panelists so that you can get to know them. Well, we have Ekpoudom, who's the partner at venture capital firm Gingerbread Capital, which backs high-growth female-founded companies. Her mission is to engage, educate, and elevate the next generation of successful women business leaders and investors. In 2014, Ita founded Tigress Ventures, an advisory and consulting firm that tapped her considerable network to bring together visionary entrepreneurs and seasoned professionals to help women scale their businesses and hone their leadership skills. Ita also served as a venture partner at Plum Alley Investments, where she oversaw investment opportunities and pipeline for high-growth female-founded and gender-diverse startups. Previously, Ita held product management roles at TravelClick and American Express. She began her career at Goldman Sachs as an analyst in credit capital markets and as an institutional trader of preferred stock. Ita holds an MBA in marketing and entrepreneurial management from the Wharton School, University of Pennsylvania, and she earned her bachelor's degree cum laude in psychology with a certificate in finance from Princeton University. Welcome, Ita. We're so glad you're here.
Thank you for having me.
Perry Yeatman is a seasoned high-impact executive whose career has spanned sectors, business, government, academia, and philanthropy, as well as geographies from Asia to Russia to Europe, and functions from marketing, HR to general management, and organizations, Kraft Foods to Unilever to WPP, to founding her own consulting and social enterprise. Today, Perry is the head of corporate. She's the head of corporate for Save the Children. In this role, Perry is leading a committed and capable team of professionals focused on developing and delivering innovative, holistic, sustainable, and scalable partnerships with leading corporations. Partnerships that simultaneously deliver business benefits while furthering Save the Children's mission focused on survival, education, and protection of the world's most marginalized kids. Prior to joining Save the Children, Perry was SVP Corporate and Government Affairs at Kraft Foods and president of the Kraft Foods Foundation. During her tenure as president of the Kraft Foods Foundation, Perry streamlined the foundation's focus and began to leverage the power of the business versus just philanthropic dollars to tackle the two sides of malnutrition, namely hunger and obesity in key markets around the world. While at Kraft, Perry also led the World Economic Forum's consumer community in developing the new vision for agriculture. Additionally, she was a key leader in the company's early work to create Cocoa Life, a multifaceted program designed to ensure that there would be future generations of cocoa farmers in key markets in Africa and Asia. Before joining Kraft, Perry was the vice president of corporate affairs for Unilever North America. She was also a member of the Unilever HPC NA Management Board. And in this capacity, among other things, Perry led the work to deliver Unilever's first nationwide community partnership with the Girl Scouts of the United States. The partnership focused on girls' self-esteem, which would later become part of the Dove Real Beauty campaign. In addition to her day jobs, Perry is an award-winning author, a frequent blogger and vlogger, a board member, and a staunch advocate for women and girls. She also still heads her social enterprise called Your Career, Your Terms. We are so excited to have you here. And
I'm just chuckling. I didn't expect you to read the whole thing. So sorry, guys. Let's get into the talk.
Excellent. Perfect. Well, now that everyone here knows all about our esteemed panelists, I would like to kick things off and actually ask a prelude question so that we can just set the stage. How do each of you think about professional development? What does professional development mean to you?
Well, okay, I'll start. So I think, first of all, I don't separate anymore the idea of professional and personal development, because the truth is these things are completely interlinked. My life and my career are, if you have a career, if you're really into it, they are fully integrated. And I think that's never been more true than what we've seen in the past couple of years. So I put it together. And so I just think of it as development. And the way I think about development is always moving towards, it's kind of two things, always trying to be the best version of myself, right? So it's continually growing and learning, which I think is just critical for everybody. But in addition to that, it is where and how. So it's not just kind of unstructured, it is very structured and thoughtful learning and development, or learning and growth. And so that's how I think about it, is where am I trying to get to and why? And then what do I need to get there? And that's how I set my roadmap.
And I think for me, it's been a journey. There's people that I know that knew what they wanted to do from like, I'll give an example. So my childhood friend that lived across the street from me, he is currently the mayor of Richmond, Virginia, LeVar Stoney. We were 8 and 9 years old. He was always the referee, the coach. He knew he was going to be a politician and a leader. I could see it when we were 8 and 9 years old, and when he's going to run for governor or maybe run for president. I knew that from 8 years. I didn't know that 8 and 9 that I'd be sitting here a partner at a venture capital firm. But what I did realize was what the development in my career, I completely agree, was aligning my personal and professional, and aligning what I was good at with what I loved to do. Because you can be very good at something but not love it. So when you can align that, what you're good at, with what you love to do, that's when it really makes work feel less like work, and you're just like, somebody's paying me to do this. That's what I hope that when you find the product market fit we talk about in my world a lot, that's what I feel like when what I'm doing is somebody's paying me for something I would have done on my own without being paid for it.
Excellent. Love that that view, and just level setting what professional development means. In this case, it's not actually a siloed professional development. It's your own development in yourself, the personal, professional, and it's really becoming the best version of yourself at given points during your entire trajectory of growth. All right, so with that, would love to hear about some of the most valuable investments that you have personally made in yourself and why you chose those investments.
Oh, wow. I'll start. Some of the most valuable investments have been in the relationships that I've built. Business is rooted in relationships, and the relationships that are not transactional, that started from a meaningful reasons, but have ended up leading to really great outcomes, both personally and professionally. And, I'll give two. I started my career at Goldman Sachs out of college. And I was there for 5 years. It's doing right out of college till before when Leeatt, you and I met in business school. And even though I was only there for the first 5 years, my analyst class, when you work 7 days a week, almost 24 hours a day with each other, you either end up loving each other or you end up being like, I never want to see these people again. So I am still really close with my analyst class and a lot of the people that I work with. And those people have now come back into my life and have stayed in my life this entire time. So that's one group. Even though I left the firm, I've been gone longer than I was ever there. That network, in fact, I now work for a former Goldman partner. So that network has stayed in my life. And then the second was I joined an amazing professional development organization called Women in America. The Women stands for Women Optimizing Mentorship, Education, and Networking. And it was a bunch of women that had kept, and I think, Perry, Shelley Diamond. She's one of the women that's part of that organization. And so I joined that as a mentee. And 10 plus years later, I was president of the Alumni Association, but it has led to amazing personal and professional developments for me. So those were two networks where the relationships that I gained personally have really helped me professionally as I've advanced in my career.
Well, so well said. I mean, I just have to double down on the relationship thing. It's like, as Leeatt told you in that very long bio, I've worked in over 50 countries. I've worked in all 4 sectors. I've worked for a ton of bosses and organizations. If you're smart and if you're you collect great people, right? Like that is the greatest asset of my career. And so now that I'm in the nonprofit space, a space I never thought I would be in, by the way, talk about continually learning and growing and developing or whatever. This wasn't where I thought I would be. I didn't know where I would be at all. Also, it was kind of like it's been an amazingly interesting journey. Anyway, the relationships have been so profound in terms of they helped me get through where we were, but now to be able to leverage them in each successive role is just incredible, right? So collecting great people, it is And out of each stint, so whether it was Singapore, whether it was Russia, whether it was Unilever, whatever, there may only be a handful that you keep, but that handful, literally, because of each of those experiences, I've got like a personal board of directors that's like 50 people big that I can call on for anything. If I'm trying to figure something out, it's amazing. LinkedIn only helped do what I was already doing, and it has been phenomenal. So I double down on that one. The other two things I wanted to talk about are the importance of business. I'm in nonprofit now, but no matter what you want to do, I just urge every woman specifically to know about business, the basics of business. So I was the CCO effectively for Kraft Foods, global head of corporate and government affairs, and the president of the foundation. The thing that set me apart in my entire career as a communicator, both in the agency world and in the corporate world, was I understood that the purpose of my job was business. It was to drive the business. It wasn't to make the prettiest speech or to necessarily have the wittiest comment or whatever. The words are great, but communication doesn't matter if it isn't actually driving towards the thing. So I invested in learning. Like I actually took accounting, and because I didn't go to business school, right? Everybody thinks I went to business school. I never went to business school. I was a double lit major. Like I knew nothing about nothing would be, but I love to learn. So every single thing I've learned, I either taught myself or I read, or I went to night school and took, I wanted to understand, the books at Unilever. So I actually went to night school and just took courses on accounting and things like that. So learn business, because it will help you no matter what sector you go into. It'll help you, manage your own life. And then the last thing I would add is learn about yourself. I honestly think I loved what you said about how your belief is that you can have a job that you'd be like, I would do this even if you didn't pay me. Okay. I can't tell you I always had jobs like that. No, they had to pay me to show up most of my career. I fully admit that. But what is really interesting is by investing in learning yourself and understanding what you're good at, what motivates you, where you want to be, how you want to be, it makes you, first of all, so much more effective as a leader and so much more effective, but it also makes you so much happier. So I really think we short circuit that, and we think we kind of know who we are. But the other thing is life is long and winding, and what you are today and what you're going to be 10 years from now may not be the same, and what you want may not be the same. So keep investing in self-awareness and learning about yourself.
Amazing. Excellent. Okay, so let's continue on. I'd love to hear a little bit, both of you guys have just shared some similar, but also just different ways of thinking about the power of relationships, investing in yourself, understanding the basic connection to the business, or, whatever your job is, how you connect to the broader picture. But so now, can you guys actually give us some specific examples? How have these things translated into your success, and how do you define success?
Well, I'll start and I'll try to be quick. I think success is all about what it is your own measure. I don't believe there is one definition of success, and I believe it changes. For me, I kind of reevaluate success usually every 3 to 5 years. What am I trying to accomplish? Because what I'm trying to accomplish is then the definition of success, right? At different points in my career, it was about promotions, it was about money, it was about recognition, it was all of these things. Today, it's about meaning, it's about flexibility, it's about being able to care for my family while I'm doing a job that I really believe is making a difference in the world, right? So success has been very, and I took a 75% pay cut to do it, right? So it's not about the money now, right? And so I think success is how you define it at your point. But if you're clear about that, you can make good choices and you can decide, where to go and how to invest. I think that when I think about the ways in which it really has come to pass for me, the biggest development that mattered. One was, as I said, business, really learning about business, because it set me apart and it let me run a company in Russia. It let me do things that I would never have been able to do if I just stayed in the agency world and just thought about advertising or marketing or communications, right? And that was the turning point. When the first time I became a general manager, that was the turning point for me, because I realized that's what I love. I want to have the whole thing. I don't want to just be like a cog in the wheel, right? So, and that let me then set up my own company and all the other things that I've successfully done. The other thing I just wanted to talk about, I think that the mentoring, the pulling people up, right? You know, we're gonna talk about like what we have done for others, I think, but what others have done for me, I think is equally important, because those experiences that were really transformational is if you invest in relationships, and this is where it's different. For women, it's not just networking. That whole idea of networking, you know, women don't usually like that. And I like that women don't like that, because women, we don't want just kind of the surface transaction, right? We actually build relationships, and these relationships can be reciprocal, right? So for me, one of the biggest things about building that network is almost every job I've ever gotten, and certainly every client I ever got, was a personal referral. That's it. That's the testament, right? Like, it's all about that. How could you measure that, right? Every job, every client.
I mean, I couldn't agree with that more. And I think the only thing I would add to that in giving a couple of examples is the points about the relationship, the points about knowing yourself, and then using those to say, just as much as when you stay is when you know when to leave, that it's time to go. Because sometimes eventually something may run its course, and staying too long will only, you know, diminish your personal growth, professional growth, and mental or well-being. And I'd say for me that there were like 3 points in my journey where that had happened. And it was the first is always the hardest. The first leaving is the hardest leaving, because you're just like, oh my God, I'm letting people down, blah, blah, blah. But then you also realize that you have to think about a bigger picture. So the hardest leave that I ever had was deciding to leave Goldman, but it was partially because, you know, life met with, you know, life interceded. So in the 5 years between when I graduated, the year after I graduated college, my father passed away. And 3 years later, my mother passed away. I got the call at work both times. And to this day, like, that guilt of not being with the people that you love when those kinds of things happen, like the people that are, you know, your champions, hurts to this day. And so in that 5-year period, and then as Leeatt knows, in the spring of first year of business school, my sister died. So in a 5-year period, I lost my dad, my mom, and my sister. And that fundamentally, when people ask in an interview, what's the biggest loss or failure? Nothing is worse than those kinds of losses, because that fundamentally changed how I choose to approach what I do, where I spend my time, and how I spend my time. So it makes you crystal clear when it's time to stay and when it's time to go. And once after that leaving of the first time, I just was laser focused when I knew I'm in the right spot, and when I know that I'm not, that you need to think about all of this, because it's all too short. So make sure what you're doing, the intent, you're moving with intention, and you're moving in spaces that are bringing out the best in you. And so, thinking about those moments is when to stay, when to go. But in each of those, when I chose to leave, the head of the division that became really close, and it's close to me to this day, wrote my letter of recommendation to business school when I went to Wharton. He's been a reference letter the entire time in most of the things that I've done since. So those relationships, because they cared about me as a person and they wanted me to be happy and successful, whether it was there, and they gave me a sabbatical to think about, because I was ready to walk out the door in that moment. They were like, think about it, make sure you're not leaving from grief, but that you are ready to move on. So those kinds of things where you build those relationships that they'll follow you throughout your career, and they won't be, you're not burning bridges, but people understand. So that's one example, and there's others, but I'll leave it there.
I am certain that everyone listening couldn't agree more that both of you are the perfect panelists to be engaged in this conversation. So I want to go back a second, because each of you guys have been talking about building relationships, the power of those relationships as, you know, being the driving force of new opportunities, clients, recommendations, and that, you know, the idea of networking, I agree, is that's not the word that most women feel is the appropriate way that they're thinking about building relationships. So can you guys dumb it down for a second? How did you guys build those relationships, right? Like, what does that look like? Because on the one hand, it's not formulaic. On the other hand, people that do it successfully, they have a mindset. There's a strategy, or there's a way in which they approach it. And so even if you don't have, you know, check boxes that you're saying, these are the 3 steps to building a relationship, I think people would really value and benefit hearing how you go about approaching that.
Yeah, and I think the truth is we're all different. So you're right. It's not a formula, but without question, I think what matters is, first of all, you got to start with a basic interest in other human beings, right? And I say this as somebody who understands. I talk a lot. I talk fast. I talk loud. Whatever. People often are like, can she even listen at the same time she's talking? And actually, but in my family, that's how I grew up. So we all are like this. So I am listening and I remember things, right? So I am just inherently a people-oriented person, right? Like for me, the organization and working with the humans, whoever they are, that is the best reason I get up every morning, right? The mission now really matters too, but it's really about the people. So I'm geared that way. But the second thing is then you need to think, okay, so that's a cool person, like, or I want to get to know them. It's not just about what do I want. You ought to understand what you want and what you need. But again, if you're building a relationship and not having a transaction, it's not about the short term. I just find people that I gravitate to. For me, a lot of that is like candid, no BS, right? I am not it's like you ask me a question, you're going to get the real answer. You may not like the real answer, but you're going to get the real answer, right? That's not for everybody, right? So I find people who gravitate towards me, who I find interesting, who are different than me. You don't want 10 Perrys in a room, right? Who different than me. And then I make the personal connection. And it can be one lunch, it can be whatever. But because it's real and it's not just on the surface, you make that moment of connection. And it could be, whenever it is in the period. But I will have people that it might have been a time at the airport where we got stranded, right? And we spent 24 hours together. It's the only time we ever worked together, but we are still friends to this day because we figured it out. We found that connection, whatever. So it's about a powerful connection. It's about reciprocity. And then, God, it's never been easier to keep track of people, right? I just think it's nice to say, hey, congratulations on your promotion or happy birthday. Or if you know them, it's like, hey, I saw this and I thought of you, right? I had a girlfriend who taught me something, which was brilliant advice early on in my career. She said, I spend the first 7 to 10 minutes every morning going through my network and just saying something positive to a couple people each morning. She goes, no matter what else is going on, I just I saw this in the news. I thought of you. I wanted to wish you, how's your daughter doing? Whatever it is. And she said over the years, she had accumulated, this woman has the best network I've ever met, right? Anybody would fall over for her because she just kept it personal, but then she also added the professional and she made time. And again, it was 10 minutes a day. And then when she traveled, this was another trick I thought was brilliant. Instead of traveling and then always staying in a hotel, she actually asked to stay in people's homes. And so she actually really got to connect with them. Now, I'm not saying that with COVID, that was all a great idea right now. I'm just saying it was a brilliant thing. So that's, to me, kind of how you go about it. And you naturally find those people and you're not force fitting. People will know if you're trying to force fit. Don't do that. Find the people you're genuinely curious, interested, and you have that connection.
Could not agree more. And, from everybody, we all know the transactional person, the person that you hear from and they do maybe like, oh, how's your day? And then you're like, and then get right down to what they really wanted. And you only hear from them when they want something, and you hear like a weird kind of like whatever until they get to what they really want. Don't ever be that person. You don't like to hear from that person. Never be that person to somebody else. So that's one thing. And I do think, and it's over time. It's just kind of like I say with people, nobody writes you a check into a company on a first meeting. Some people might, and mostly those are guys that get that kind of check on one conversation. But it usually takes multiple interactions for somebody to remember you, for somebody to know that you're not just there for a singular transaction, that you're wanting to hear about them. And I do agree that the ability to be vulnerable enough to not seem totally perfect all the time, because sometimes we'll always have to be like, oh, I'm a gunner, I'm a winner, I'm always like, crushing it. Like social media makes it seem like we're always crushing it. But those people that I think that are willing to share the not so great parts and the parts that are a struggle, I think are the people that you then enjoy saying, okay, I'd love to learn more about you. And the people that when you're not in the room, they're saying great things about you and you are that person to somebody else, comes back around to you. So like being kind and thinking of others and put it without expecting something in return is usually the best way to go about it, because eventually it comes back to you, because somebody will be like, oh my God, I heard you said this great thing about me. And it makes people like surprise and delight is when that happens and somebody said, oh, I heard about you from XYZ, and that you had no reason to do it other than just saying that's a great person and referring them. So that's how I've built my relationships. And then doing one thing tactically, mutual opt-in before you make an introduction. Mostly women don't do this, but guys do it a lot. They're like, oh, you should know this person. They just put you on an email together and just say, because they think you should know each other, your time is your most valuable thing. So maybe before you make that, make sure the other person, why you thought it's a mutually beneficial kind of introduction before you just put people together, because they may be mortal enemies or have a reason not to, and give somebody the ability to opt out without having to force somebody to have an uncomfortable conversation. I think people appreciate those kinds of little things that lead to being thoughtful in interactions and building relationships.
Amazing. Okay, there's two other things I want to cover. So one, would love to hear the single most important way that you have supported other women in your career.
Okay, I'm going to say, I got 4, but I'm just going to do it as a list. One is, I really think it's the day job. You have got to be doing it every single day with the people you engage with every day. So day job is very important. Second, and by the way, people have often said, I'm not the easiest person to work for, but they say I am transformational. I have made a difference in their career, right? They have learned and grown and whatever. Second thing, books, podcast, website, as you mentioned. My view is, I've written 2 books, I do a podcast, whatever. It's how can you share? How can you share and just help others? Make it free, put it out there. I've been really blessed to have an incredible life and career. How can I help others? Third one, interviews like this, absolutely. And then, for a period of time, I was a career coach, right? Because I really, really believe in the power of women. And I think we undersell ourselves, and I think we don't invest in ourselves enough. So I made it a business and have loved it.
I think for me, when I really love something and when I really care about something and I'm doing it, I tell my network of friends, and whether it was Women in America, have like the lineage of people that are like, I love this organization, you should join it. Like if I love something enough to want to do it, I like to tell people, and it's been helpful. I tell people about it. I tell them to join it. And I guess the single biggest is what I get to do every day. I get to write checks into companies. Women are starting to build companies, cultures, organizations that will change the face of leadership, and that the face of leadership is female, and it's high growth, and it's money making, and all of those things. So aligning what I do with what I love and bringing other women along with it, I think is how I would answer that question.
Amazing. Okay, a 10-second response from each of you. What is one important takeaway that you would leave with everyone here on investing or deepening their own professional, personal development?
Don't just think about it, do it. You don't have to do it in a major way. If it's invested, you can invest as little as $100. Like if it's investing, just do it. We can think about ourselves and talk ourselves out of things. Start a baby step of action, and you'll be surprised to see where it goes.
Agreed. I would say you are the CEO of your life and career. There is nobody else who's going to do this job the way you do, right? You are responsible. Your boss can help, others can help, but it is you. So you need to think about knowledge, skills, experiences, all of the levers that you can pull to get development. And you should target that development towards what you want at that point in your life.
And I have one more, Leeatt.
Yes,
boss,
go for it.
Linnea, when I took this role, the prompt she gave me, which I'm now like telling everybody, she said, write me your dream role. That was the prompt. That was it. So when you have that, what is your dream role, and you put it out there into the world, you'll be surprised that somebody either reacts or says, that makes sense with me. Join me in this journey. And that's what happened when I wrote that letter to her. It ended up being almost 4 years later, I'm still there, and it's still doing kind of the things we envisioned. So I would say to everybody here, write me your dream role, and then let's go start talking to that network you're building about how to turn that dream into a reality.
Amazing. Ita, Perry, round of applause. This was so wonderful. Just by the chats and by the feeling that I have, and I'm sure that you have, it's so important to pause and to take a moment to reflect. And there's no better way to reflect than with women who embody the values and the ambition that each of us aspires to have. So thank you so much for sharing all of these ideas, taking time out of your busy days to share them with us. We really appreciate it. in
Thank you for
celebration
having
of
us, Leeatt.
Women's History Month. Thank you.
Great to
Thank
see
you,
you.
guys.
Take care,
Bye,
guys.
everyone.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining. We appreciate it.